Hello, everyone. Hi, how's everybody doing today? I hope you're all well. Thank you for joining us for today's Lunch and Learn, led by Suzanne Bradbeer. We are so excited to have Suzanne here with us today. And on behalf of Primary Stages and ESPA family, I thank you for joining us today. And if you've been with us, like an especially big thank you. Just so you know who we are, Primary Stages is an off-Broadway theater company here in New York City, and I say here because that's where I'm reaching you all from. ESPA is the school that's at Primary Stages, the Einhorn School of Performing Arts, which is for emerging and established artists. And we are so excited to be able to continue to connect with you via the interwebs. Although we are sad that we can't be with you in person, we're committed now more than ever to continue to connect with you, and we're so excited that you're taking this opportunity to join us for lunch today. Now, I mentioned her before, Suzanne Bradbeer is our playwright today. Just a little bit of information on Suzanne. Her plays have been produced across the US, and some productions include Confederates, The God Game, Naked Influence, Shakespeare in Vegas, and Full Bloom. Suzanne is a member of the Ensemble Studio Theater and the EST Playwrights Unit, the Dramatists Guild, and is a regular moderator at the Actors Studio Playwright and Director Workshop. A personal highlight for Suzanne was that her work she worked as a dramaturg for Arthur Miller and Jim Houghton's signature theater company production of The American Clock, which I love that play. So I was really excited to learn that about you, Suzanne. And you can access Suzanne's writing on Play Scripts, Samuel French, Smith and Krause, and Applause Books. Those last two in particular, there's a lot of anthologies that Suzanne is in, so check her out. Suzanne, how are you today?
Wee!
Wee!
Good.
Yeah.
I'm really grateful to be here with everybody. It was thinking about doing this Lunch and Learn was just a really lovely opportunity to think about process and to think about the role of the subconscious, which is what I've been particularly focused on lately, and a way to participate in this programming that y'all are doing, which I think is so fantastic. And thank you for inviting me to the party.
Well, we're so excited to have you at the party. You are the party today. We're excited about the programming, and I understand that you're joining us not from New York. Where are you, Suzanne?
I'm in rural Wyoming. And I moved here recently with my husband, recently meaning I haven't lived here longer than a couple of months, including now. And usually I spend part-time in New York. I share an apartment with a friend, and then have this place, which is new. So everything is new right now for me. The house is the good new, and the coronavirus is the bad new.
Well, we are so excited you are with us today for this new experience, this new Lunch and Learn. So let's dive into all those questions that folks submitted to us. Let's start at the beginning. How do you start?
I guess when I when I first started writing, I would only work on, and I don't mean only, but I could only manage to work on one play at a time. That took everything I had. And but some of the ways that I still work are the same, which is I journal a lot. And I just start writing. I use a notebook, I use pencil or pen. For me, that's just more connected. It goes, for some reason, that process, and it's different for different people, but that for me goes to my heart and my gut more than starting on a computer. And then I think about what's on my mind. What am I angry about? What do I feel sorrow about? What has jazzed me in some way? I try to fill my experience of life with different things, like one idea for a play came from This American Life, and a related idea came from a 60 Minutes episode, just something that launched me. And then I write and write and write. Eventually I separate out a notebook just for that play when it starts to emerge. When a character has started to reveal herself or himself, and I realize this actually now gets its own notebook and not my journal notebook, which has everything in it, including what lip shade I might like to buy.
Well, that's so interesting that you then divide into different notebooks. I'm going to start using that for sure. I see that Carol just joined us, and she actually sent me this question. So how much direction does a playwright give the director? And how do you navigate that in your writing?
You know, each relationship is somewhat different, but the question makes me think of, I was hanging out with a friend of mine who is also a playwright. And I was leaving and her 5-year-old said to me, "Where are you going?" And I said, "I'm going to rehearsal." And he said, "What do you do?" And I said, "I'm a playwright." And he said, "Oh, you're the boss." And I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm the boss." Not really, but I loved that was what he was learning. But really, ideally, when you find a director, and you know, sometimes directors are presented to you, and you don't have choice, and sometimes you do have choice. But always there's a conversation about the play, and you know, it's very valuable to know that they like and love the play, and you negotiate and you talk about things, and you know, with casting. My feeling is, for example, that either one of us can say that that's not going to work for me, if we're sort of trying to figure something out and the director is 51% and I'm 49%, I give her the final say, but it's really a discussion and a back and forth. And, you know, part of the first way that you can give directions, you know, of course, is in your stage directions. And over my life as a writer, I've gone back and forth about stage directions. And in my classes, it's something that always comes up, which is, you know, how much to do. At first, I wanted to be as lean and mean as possible and have as little as possible. And now I've kind of come to having a little bit more. And I do think that stage directions are they're not magically separate from the dialogue and from your story. They are part of the story that you're trying to tell, which doesn't mean that then there isn't, you know, a conversation to be had with the director, because hopefully your director and your actors and your designers are going to meet you at your play and then raise it. And so they'll bring new ideas. So if I'm rigid, then I'm going to lose out, because they're going to be hopefully bringing things that I never thought about. But on the other hand, I do want them to respect that that was an impulse, and that can be helpful to them to know that this is what I was thinking and going for.
Amazing. What tips do you have for developing an idea or concept to find your characters and your arc? So both character and plot.
Some of that, first of all, I believe that your character is your plot. So what your character is doing becomes the plot of your play. And actually, I was reading recently, Jose Rivera referred to structure as organization. And I liked that word as a way of thinking about plot and structure. It seemed more inclusive of different ways of going about it. And, Tina Howe she called it shape. But I think that what the character does becomes what the plot is. So I do so much work on character throughout my process of writing, including when I'm several drafts in. If I feel stuck or if I feel like I haven't understood something yet, I'll go back and work on character. And a lot of that character work is monologue work. And one of the exercises, the main exercise we'll be doing today, will be related to that. But I also, again, I'm journaling, I'm asking questions. It's like peeling an onion. As I get to know the character and what is driving them, and what is their deepest wish in life, and what is their greatest sorrow, and what is their biggest regret. And all of this can be in a comedy. In fact, sometimes I like it best when it is. My most personal, well, one of my most personal and painful plays for me is actually one of my comedies, which is Shakespeare in Vegas, which is about a bitter creative person trying to find their joy again. And it happens to be in Vegas. So where else can you find your joy? And you never know if once you start, I find, once I start writing and doing some exercises, but mainly just writing and being out in the world, I am amazed. It's like when somebody says a word that you never heard before, and then suddenly it feels like you hear it all the time. I'm amazed what things come to me when I'm receptive in that way. So there was a play called My Play Full Bloom, which was my second play. I knew what the journey of the main character was, but I could not figure out how to start the play. And I went to the Museum of Modern Art because I like going there. And a friend of mine was doing a gallery talk, and she was talking about 7 different paintings. They were all abstract expressionist artists. And one of them was by a painter called Barnett Newman. And this painting was called One Meant One. And my friend Allison talked about how he came to create this work of art. And it's very simple, very plain. I had been to the Museum of Modern Art a million times and never, ever, ever, ever noticed it. But the way she talked about it, they're his zip paintings. There's a line in the center of the painting. And the way she talked about it, she talked about Barnett Newman after World War II, finding his creative life again. And for him, this painting represented man coming out of the chaos and the sorrow of World War II. And I found that so beautiful. I was weeping in the Museum of Modern Art around these other people, and but then I was thinking about my character, because she was always on my mind. Her name is Phoebe. And I thought, what if she looked at this painting and did not see man or woman or girl coming out of the chaos? What if she saw girl disappearing into the chaos? And that became my whole leaping off point for this play. And it framed the entire play from the first monologue to the final moment of the play.
Amazing. So your way in is character.
Character.
I love it. We got a great question from Nathan. He's asking, do you find that your dramaturgical work and playwriting complement one another, and how?
Oh, wow. Yes, great question. I think they do. And now, yeah, I do think they do. That it's easier to talk sometimes about how you might be helpful to someone else than to see the big splinter in your own play that you can't figure out how to deal with. But it also, it helps me learn about different ways of telling stories, and think about, experience somebody else's point of view. It's, in the case of the Arthur Miller play, that was a long time ago, but that was all research. Oh,
wow.
I kind of, because of, if you know the American clock, it takes place back before the crash of 29, and then mainly during that time in America's history. And it's a really amazing, amazing play. And Arthur Miller it had already been done. It had been done in New York and failed, if we can use that word that I don't particularly like, and then, so it was a painful experience that he wanted to try to have a new one for it. And so we did it at Signature off Broadway, 160 seats. And it was published. I can't remember who, whether it was Samuel French. And he went back and he worked on it again. And this was, I think, 20 years later, 25 years later. But it was still important to him to try to make it as best as it could be. So I naively and maybe a little bit arrogantly, and I still sort of can't believe I did this, since he was working on it, I said to Jim Houghton, well, I had a thought about, this section of the play, and I started to say it. Luckily, Arthur Miller wasn't in the room. And Jim Houghton looked at me with horror, absolute abject horror in his face, and said, oh no, that's not what we're doing. So in that particular play, my job was to make the period alive for the actors. So that if you talked about 25 cents, you knew what that meant to you in 1929. You knew how much, a pint of milk cost. And if we referred to, some famous person of the era, they would know who that was.
Amazing. Well, great. How has the current shelter-in-place reality affected your work?
Well, I am watching a lot of the Rockford Files. And I'm not playing Plants v. Zombies, which is an app, which is so ridiculously addictive that I think it was melting my brain. So I guess, yeah, I love that question because I've been finding it hard to focus. So I've been trying to invite ways to allow me to focus more, to be gentle with the process, but also to make room for my imagination and my subconscious. So for example, I've been making some changes in the way I approach the day. I used to, the first thing I would do is get up, make coffee, and turn on either the TV, the radio, or a podcast. And I would immediately want stimulus, immediately. Now I don't do that. I make coffee, but
must have coffee.
Yeah, have to. Yeah, that's the best part of the day. But I'm not filling up all the space now, and I'm making a real effort. And it was at first a real effort. Like it just felt unnatural. I need stimulation. I need to hear something. And now I'm not doing it, and it's not an effort anymore. I feel like I've changed that habit. And it is, now I'm writing with more focus than I had been, because I'm allowing that, what I think of as mind-wandering time to just have its way with me. And without agenda, without a particular thing that I'm trying to achieve, but just having that silence. And that has been golden. And I think that is, having lived in New York for most of my adult life, I know silence can sometimes be hard to find, but not impossible. So that's a big thing that I've been doing. I've also, I guess my journaling goes back and forth in terms of how much I do it. I've been doing more of that. I've been doodling. I will show you. I've been doodling.
Oh!
I've been making creatures and just, yeah, trying to open up the pathways and trying to allow them to find me.
Amazing. Now, how you start your day, do you move into a more regimented writing schedule after you've started that, or?
Yeah, in general, it depends on what is going on. But I do write better in the morning. So I do try to use that time if I can to write. I try to do business conversations later in the day if possible, and including collaborative conversations. I'll try not to do the first thing. I'll try to get some some writing done. Yeah, that tends to be, I don't necessarily write every day. In fact, you know, I hadn't been at all writing every day, but this sort of change in space and quiet is sort of recalibrating that right now in a good way.
It's recalibrating everything.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, shall we get into those, the prompts you brought us today? Everyone, Suzanne has amazing prompts for us today, and I'm so excited.
Well, one of the things I wanted to do, and before we get to the prompt,
Yeah.
was actually invite everyone to invite their muse back into their life if they feel like they've been disconnected, or even if they've been somewhat connected. And so if there's a habit that you can change, if there's a time in your life that you can sort of cut out some of the noise, if you can do a task, like for me, washing dishes without, or, you know, getting up for the coffee, but later in the day, washing dishes. I used to love to listen to Criminal or Dirty John podcast, or Stay Tuned with Preet. But doing that, also finding moments to be, to just really let your mind go walkabout. I would love it if everybody here might try to change one habit that might allow some quiet and mind wandering back or more further into your life. And do that for the next 7 days. Do that for the next 2 weeks. See after a month if you've been able to still achieve that and what that feels like, and if it has affected your work and your feelings about your work. So that's a kind of a challenge. And then, and it's something that I ask of my classes too. When we start the class, I ask them, and I've been really excited by the response that people, you know, when they've sort of committed to doing that, how they feel like that has opened up their writing. Now, a way that and here's the first sort of prompt, a way that I start every class, and you may have gathered from what I've been saying, is that I do believe in getting inspiration from different places. And I also believe, you know, if you do, like I like to do drawing, and I'm not a good drawer, although I thought those doodles were pretty good, but generally
they are very good.
I'm not a good drawer, but I like to start every class with a short timed draw. And so, well, that's what we're gonna first do. It's very short. Usually in class, we share it with each other, but I think we won't at this moment because there are a lot of us. And I always have a particular thing to draw. And the idea is quick. Don't think about it. You don't have to be a good drawer. In fact, it's probably better if you're not, because then you're not going to have that perfectionism, you know, that soul-killing perfectionism saying, "Ooh, that was good." So that's what I'd like to start with, just really quick. So does everybody have their writing and paper? So we'll just take in the room around you, the light, sounds if there are any, sounds if they're not. If you smell anything. And I want to take that quiet that we're in, that attention, and go back to your childhood. And think about your childhood bedroom. And if you have more than one bedroom, if you moved around, just the first bedroom that comes to mind of if you had more than one. And whether it was in a house or an apartment building, whether you were in an urban community or a suburban or rural, whether you shared that room with someone. And now we're going to time this. I just want you to draw that room, that childhood room. So another minute. Okay. One of the things that I love about doing this at the beginning of class is that, for one thing, it is a shorthand to trust between people who don't know each other. So we are all in class together, we don't know each other, and we're going to be sharing our writing, which is incredibly personal. And something about sharing that childhood bedroom, and that's not always the prompt. I'll give you some others for if you, but our discoveries are made and connections are made, and sort of there's a shorthand to rooting for each other and community with each other that I have found really beautiful. And the other thing I like about that is I will do this exact same exercise with characters from the play. So I will ask them and myself to pick one of the characters in their play, and it could be the central character, and sometimes it's a character that you're struggling with, which could be the central character but might be somebody else. Sometimes it's even an offstage character who has a large presence, and ask to draw their childhood bedroom. And some really fabulous things have come out of that. Castles, cabins in the woods, and all kinds of things. So that's been one of the ways that I like to get at character from unexpected ways. And it becomes a way of approaching character without judgment or telling yourself, well, that couldn't be. Just entering into it and seeing what comes out in what you might imagine that childhood bedroom of Phoebe to be in your play. Some of the other questions that I like to draw in class are, who was your childhood hero? And a lot of them are based on childhood, although they certainly aren't all, but I think it was Romulus Linney who was quoting somebody else who said that most things of import in your life happened by the time you were 10, and then the rest of the time is figuring out how to deal with that. So a lot of the ones are childhood, but they're not all. One of my favorites is, if you had to leave your house suddenly and would never be coming back, what would you take with you? Draw that thing. And not family, not children, they're safe, not animals, and not your computer, but some other thing. What would that item be? And then I love to do that with a character. What would that character take with them? Another one I love is, what terrified you as a child? Draw that. Pick a character. What terrified him, her as a child? Draw that. What terrifies you now? Draw that. Favorite toy. One of the ones I did recently, actually, I guess the one that I did right after we went to with the class I'm doing now, is for our first Zoom meeting. I asked, because I certainly didn't want to ask, what are you terrified of? It didn't seem quite ready for that yet. But so I asked, what are you grateful for? And draw that. And it's fun if sometimes what you're grateful for is hard to draw, but if that's fine. Favorite holiday is another one. If you could change something about yourself, what would that be? And all of these with characters as well. So that's my drawing spiel for today. And I have, but I do have a writing exercise as well. Should we go to that?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay, so this one, let's see, I wanted to show you, when I first started writing, I picked up this book called The Playwright's Process by Buzz McLaughlin. And as you can see, it's a wreck. And it really helped me. He talks about the craft, and he interviews probably about 20 different playwrights. And one of the wonderful things is different playwrights have different points of view about what is best for them. And it's really helpful to see sometimes some people outline. I usually don't outline. Some people know the end of their play when they start, some people don't. So it's, some people say you should never write about anything you've experienced until you're 10 years away from it. So you have that distance. You know, not everybody feels that way. Some people say if you have, write your play within a 2-year span, and after that, you're done, move on. I don't follow that one myself, but so there's all kinds of wonderful insight in that particular book. And he has lots of exercises. One of the ones I love, which is the one I'm going to share with you today, is what he calls a milestones exercise. And we're going to time it. This is not an exercise that you need to share ever with anybody, this particular one right now, if you don't want to, because it's going to be about you. But this milestone exercise, and you'll see as we go through it, you can also use with your characters. And it's incredibly helpful to use with your characters. But first, I want you to understand what it is from the depth of yourself and the person that you probably know best. So I want to do it with ourselves as the character. And actually, I think it's kind of helpful if you can think of yourself as the character. So the exercise is in 3 parts, and I'll guide you through it. And you'll need your pen and paper. And you'll need 3 different sheets of paper, 3 separate, and not the back, if possible. You can, but if possible, 3 separate sheets. So again, just to sort of get centered into where you are, what you're sitting on, the space around you, the sounds around you, the light, where it's coming from, the smells. On the first piece of paper, write down your full name at the top. Full, if you had, like a friend of mine does, about 3 confirmation names as well as her middle name, write them all. And if you have a nickname, write that in parentheses. And then write your date of birth. And for just a moment, think about that date, that year, that month. What your parents' hopes for you might have been. Did you have siblings? What was the world that you were being born into? And here I'm going to set, in a moment, I'm going to set the timer for 3 minutes. 3. And what I want you to do, as you have focused on that person, in my case, Suzanne Mary Bradbeer, is I want you to free associate every significant event that has ever happened in your life without judgment though. So if a significant event that comes into your mind is the green velvet jacket that you bought with your first babysitting money, put that down. Don't judge it. Don't judge anything, but just write, because we're going to need 30 of those in 3 minutes, at least 30. So when I start the timer, you can start. No analyzing, no judging. If it's just a word you write, like jacket, fine, just keep going down the page, one after another, as many of those events as you can, but there should be at least 30. And I'm going to start the timer now. All right. So just want you to take a moment to look through your list and make sure that you understand everything that you wrote. For example, if you wrote Gomer, like maybe I did once, and you were referring to the Gomer pile lunchbox that you were humiliatingly given when you were in 2nd grade, you want to make sure that you remember that Gomer is what that refers to. And then, new piece of paper. And this is also going to be timed. This is also going to be 3 minutes. I want you to go through that list, and on the next piece of paper, write the 8 most significant of those events. So if the velvet green jacket made it into your original list, that may not be, the final 8, or maybe it is. But choose events that had the most impact, that were most significant in your lives. The final 8, not the final 9, the final 8 events. And I'm going to time that, so you'll have to pick from your list and narrow down to get that 8, starting now. Okay. And this is the final part of this exercise, which is not really timed, but it's less than 3 minutes. But I want you to get the third piece of paper, the final piece of paper, and write again on that final piece of paper at the top your full name, all the names you have, including your nicknames, your date of birth. And then I want you to list those 8 significant events, those milestones, those impactful times in your life. I want you to list them now chronologically. List the 8 chronologically. And we'll just take about a minute or so to do that. Okay. So now hopefully you have those 8 chronologically. Now, as a future thing to do, I would write a monologue for yourself of each of those events. And you you could free write that monologue. You could choose someone that you feel you are talking to. And then I would also, and this is what I did with all of my early plays, and I still sometimes do it when I'm struggling to figure out a character. I will do this entire exercise with every single character in my play. And then I will write monologues. I don't know if I've always written 8 monologues for every character, but I may have. And this will be at a point where you've already started to think about your play and your characters, so you do have somewhat of a handle on them, but you don't really know them that well yet. And this has been, when I first did this, and Buzz McLaughlin of that book suggests this is one of the exercises that he says for characters, is that when I first did that, I thought, well, I don't know her yet. But what this does is helps you get to know her, so that there are things that you discover in the writing of it. And the timed nature of it is so important, because you just have to bypass that judger in your head and just go for things that occur to you. And they won't all end up being true to that character probably, but many of them will. Many of them will inform who that person is in ways that you just can't plan or expect. So I found it a wonderful tool for using the subconscious to help me develop the characters that I'm working on. And also I was thinking when we were doing this that when we were talking about characters before and developing characters and discovering them, one of the things I read that Tony Kushner said that I found extraordinarily helpful was when he was working on Angels in America, and he was struggling with it at some point. And he was even struggling. He said, like, what is this? What is this thing I'm creating? So he said, he sat down and he decided to ask the character that was most like him in the play. And that was Lewis. So he said, Lewis, what is this play about? And then he just started writing, and Lewis spoke to him. And I do that sometimes too. And sometimes I will ask, a character a direct question. I think calling somebody by name is very evocative. So I might ask Phoebe to help me and ask her something particular that I'm trying to figure out about her. Like, why did you run out of the room right then, Phoebe? Why did you slam the door? And then how are you going to get back in there? Yeah, so that's my prompts for today. But I encourage you, I hope that you'll try using them for characters that you're working on, and see if they are as helpful to you as they've been to me.
Well, thank you. I got a question during that that exercise, and Martha was asking, is it a 3-minute time limit for each monologue?
For the monologues, no time limit necessarily, but that's a great question. I think the monologues, but I wouldn't necessarily use a time limit on the monologues. I might change who your character is talking to in the monologues, whether it's their very best friend, or whether it's they're waking up from anesthesia and it's a stranger in the room, a nurse, and they start, going on, because they're going to relay those things differently to different people, and it can be helpful to play with the type of person that they may be revealing themselves to. But you could try it timed, not timed, and see what works best for you. I think for the monologues, I tend not to do it timed.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Suzanne. This has been lovely.
It's been lovely for me.
Oh, I'm glad. Oh, Danielle just wrote in before you leave us. When free associating is the first step, are you aiming for events, like a whole event, or like a specific moment of that event?
Both. And either, yeah, the specific moment or the whole big event. But I love, you know, the specificity. The more you can bring in of specificity, the more the whole event becomes enlivened and enriched and layered. So you need both, and I would invite both.
I found in my list, a lot of them were very, very specific moments that were part of a larger event.
Yeah. And the great thing about the monologues is that then some of that specificity will help give the blood and guts. If you chose a big event, it'll help with the blood and guts of that big event, all those small, tinier moments. Or sometimes the tinier moments will open up to that big event that you may have even forgotten or shut out or not accessed for whatever reason.
When you start to dip into those events that maybe you haven't accessed, they might be painful. Do you have any advice for how to navigate unlocking those events, that subconscious?
You know, I think Proust was onto something, you know, with the Madeleines, and everything that you can remember as far as detail. You know, if I think about this, just thinking about it right now, the night my brother was born, remembering that I was brought to a friend's house and slept in this girl's bed. I was 6, you know, and feeling awkward. And I remember being squeezed up against the wall and, you know, just weird things.
Right.
Trying to remember what it looked like. And yeah, all your senses can help you, and they will all help make it come alive.
Yeah.
Hey, and another book I wanted to recommend.
Yes.
And this is about creativity and not just about playwriting, but it's this Ray Bradbury book called Zen in the Art of Writing, Essays on Creativity. And it is just beautiful. It is so inspiring, and it's fun to read, but it's a gift. It just feels like his gift to everybody who wants to create something, which I personally think is all of us in whatever way it is, whether it's cooking or writing or drawing. And I love what he says in the preface. He says, how to climb the tree of life, throw rocks at yourself, and get down again without breaking your bones or your spirit.
Oh, I love that.
Great book.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you, Suzanne. Thank you for joining us. I think we're going to, somebody just sent me the link for the book. So I'm going to share that with everyone. Thank you, Michael. Thank you for joining us.
Can I share one other thing?
Yes, please do.
Because I wanted to think about, end with just thinking about some nice things, what I call some nice things, whatever they may be in the world. And something that I saw the other day, maybe it was yesterday, was that the Saturday Night Live actor Michael Che offered to pay the rent, is paying the rent of 160 families who lived in a building where his grandmother used to live. She died of the coronavirus, and this was a building that she lived in the 90s, and it was significant to their whole family, that building, that time in their lives. So he's paying 160 people's rent right now, which I thought was beautiful. And to bring out Tony Kushner again, he said that, and he wrote this, I think, or at least was referring to the Reagan administration, but that hope is a moral imperative, which I completely agree with. And also I sent a link about where Cheryl Strayed is interviewing George Saunders, who is the short story writer, but also novelist, who seems like just an incredibly beautiful spirit. And she said to him that it's kind of similar to what Tony Kushner said, that it's kind of a moral responsibility to seek the beauty in the world, beauty in the midst of uncertainty and sorrow. And he expanded on that thought and said, to be mindful of what pleasures there are is a really good way to make sure that when you're needed, you'll be ready. So that's my thought for the day.
Thank you for that. Yay, people are giving a round of applause. Round of applause for Suzanne. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for making
so much. I enjoyed
our
this
days
so
a little
much.
more beautiful.
What did you say?
I said thank you for making our days a little more beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. My
Thank
day
you,
is made more
Suzanne.
beautiful too.
Enjoy the Wyoming sun.
Woo! Thank
Woo!
you. Bye, everybody.